Hello and welcome. UVA Speaks is a podcast of Lifetime Learning, a division of the Office of Engagement at the University of Virginia. Lifetime Learning brings the knowledge and expertise of UVA's faculty to the university's alumni, friends, and families. My name is Susan Lynch, and I am the Associate Director of Lifetime Learning at the University of Virginia's Office of Engagement. This podcast features Naomi Cahn, the Justice Anthony M. Kennedy Distinguished Professor of Law, the Armistead M. Dobie Professor of Law, and co-director of the Family Law Center at the School of Law at the University of Virginia. Cahn is an expert in family law, trusts and estates, feminist jurisprudence, reproductive technology, and aging in the law. She is the co-author of casebooks in both family law and trusts and estates, and has written numerous articles that have been featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and the New Yorker. In this podcast, Professor Cahn will talk with us about her book, Hot Flash: How the Law Ignores Menopause and What We Can Do About It, which she co-wrote with her co-authors Emily Gold Waldman and Bridget J. Crawford from the Elizabeth Hobbs School of Law at Pace University. So thank you, Professor, for speaking with me today.
Delighted to be here. Thanks so much.
Great. So first, what prompted you and your co-authors to write the book Hot Flash: How the Law Ignores Menopause and What We Can Do About It?
This actually goes back to before the start of the pandemic. So I think it was 2019 when my two co-authors, Emily Waldman and Bridget Crawford, planned a conference. And they planned a conference actually on menstruation. They planned it was a takeoff of the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, by Judy Blume. And they focused the conference on menstruation. There's been a great deal of activism around periods, the tampon tax, et cetera, et cetera. And so they wanted to bring together experts. So I wrote them because I know them, saying, gee, what about if I write a short article for about menopause? So given that the conference was focused on periods, I said, well, what about the absence of periods, which is, of course, what the definition of menopause is? And the two of them were incredibly enthusiastic. So I presented a short research agenda on menopause at this conference, which was held at Columbia Law School, sponsored by one of their journals. And I got such great comments from the two of them, that we decided to write a couple of law review articles together, which blossomed into 3 law review articles, which then became a whole book.
Wonderful. So thank you for that. Menopause.
It's a rather long explanation, but it comes out of the increasing advocacy around periods, saying, well, what about menopause? And it happened. Yeah, I mean, this has been writing a book is not something that happens overnight.
Sure, of course. Menopause is a subject that's gained much attention, I'd say, in the last few years. Why do you think menopause is having a moment?
I think there are a number of reasons that menopause is having a moment. Michelle Obama has talked about it. Oprah's talked about it. Glamour had 10 celebrities who have spoken out about menopause. Drew Barrymore, Maria Shriver, a whole series of celebrities have started to talk about it. And I think it's because I think there are numerous reasons for menopause having a moment, or as we say, lots of moments. And that's the increasing openness about all things, not just related to periods, but I mean, think about it. In August of 2020, former First Lady Michelle Obama, on her podcast, described her personal experiences with menopause. She recounted having a hot flash on Marine One just before she had to appear at an event. And I mean, that kind of openness, that kind of talking about those experiences, I think has only become possible with a greater cultural openness, a greater cultural awareness of issues and of issues around aging. So more openness about women's status in society, more openness about the process of aging, incredible medical developments in the field. And there's also, we have a whole chapter on this, as health tech becomes more pervasive, there are increasing numbers of marketing opportunities for products related to menopause. And we, as I said, we have a whole chapter on I just what those products are. So a variety of different cultural moments coming together, and here we are. I think when I first tentatively proposed, well, what about menopause? The it was before this moment. It was while there was, I mean, there's still enormous amounts of silence and stigma around menopause. But it was before all of this attention had happened. So we're delighted. We're delighted to see increasing amounts of attention to this, a whole Oprah special. And where we come in, where our book comes in, is we're focused on the law and on how the law approaches menopause and what reforms might help in the future.
So, what surprised you the most as you prepared and wrote your book?
There are a lot of things that surprised us. One thing that surprised us, and I was, I came of age, or I well remember in the early 2000s that there was an enormous amount of warning that there was in the early 2000s. There were groundbreaking findings that hormones, which had been believed to help treat menopause, to help with all of the symptoms of menopause, including, of course, the title of our book, a hot flash, that hormones, shocking news about hormones, and that it was the Women's Health Initiative designed to study the impact of hormones on menopause. And it was slated, it began in 1993. It was slated to run for 8 years. It had tens of thousands of women enrolled, and then it was halted. It was halted 3 years early with headline news. And the headline news was that there was no reduction in heart disease from using hormones, and that there were concerns about the safety of using hormones. And so hormone therapy for treatment with menopause just fell dramatically. And all kinds of editorials, all kinds of public media about this. And as a result of that, hormones became decreasingly prescribed for menopause. Anyway, so that was the story that I believed until we started working on the book. And then as we did the research for the book, as we pulled together material for the book, one of the shocking things was, well, gee, hormones, just as menopause, hormones are now having a moment. And so one of the shocks was the study, this groundbreaking study that was halted early in 2002, that wasn't the full story. That in fact, hormones might be helpful in treating the symptoms of menopause, and that a whole generation of people being educated in medical schools, a whole generation of people had not learned about the potential benefits of these hormones, which really can help with many of the symptoms of menopause. And so it's I think just causing the new findings, the return to thinking about hormonal treatments was one of the things that completely shocked me. And the recommendations are that with care, hormones can be useful for many people. So menopause hormonal therapy, menopause treatments can actually be useful. And I think an increasing number of people are now aware of the potential benefits. There's also the typical treatment for menopausal symptoms has been these hormonal treatments. And as we were finalizing the book, the FDA approved a non-hormonal treatment for hot flashes that's sold under the brand name Veoza. So that's a shock, is increasing development of treatments for menopausal symptoms. There's also, I think what shocked me is sort of how, at the time we started, how little had been written in the legal world, because of course I'm a law professor, how little had been written in the legal world about menopause, and how laws didn't really address menopause directly. And then I guess one more thing. So changing approaches to hormonal treatments, how little had actually been written about menopause in the law. And then we spend a lot of time in the book talking about what's going on in the UK, in the United Kingdom, where there's a great deal more attention being paid to menopause, and companies increasingly promote their healthy approaches to menopause.
Right. Could you give us
There were so many things that surprised
can you give us an example? Yeah.
and also, I mean, the fact that the shaman stigma is is finally starting to be dissolved as more and more people speak out about this. I think even when we started the book, it was kind of hard for me to even say the word menopause in public. And now here I am, the co-author of a whole book about it and doing a podcast with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you give us examples of what they're doing in the UK? What kind of things that interest you of what they're doing there that we are not?
One thing is, okay, turning to the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has an anti-discrimination law known as the Equality Act 2010, and it doesn't explicitly mention menopause as a form of discrimination, but it's been interpreted, and cases have started to interpret it to make it easier for menopausal employees to succeed in claims that involve harassment. So it's we don't have a law that's directly analogous in the United States. It's a combination of the Americans with Disabilities Act and Title VII, which is the Employment Discrimination Act, and the Age Discrimination in Employment Act in the US. And the UK's Equality Act has a series of protected characteristics. Again, they don't include menopause, but a number of cases have arisen in which courts, or in which, I'm sorry, tribunals have interpreted the Equality Act to apply to menopausal employees. And I'm happy to give you an example.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay. So there's a 2019 case called A versus Beaumarchais Limited. So an employee, we don't know the employee's name, but referred to as A, had worked in retail for over 30 years when she began the menopause transition. And by the way, I should at this point note that menopause is defined as the moment at which there's been no period for a time of 12 months. So up until that time, there's the perimenopausal period, there's the perimenopausal transition, which can take place over the course of many years. So the A had worked in retail for over 30 years when she began the menopause transition. And at that point, A claimed, her manager began to demean her and humiliate her. And so she suffered a panic attack. And the store's human resources department agreed that she could have a part-time schedule. And the manager did not react very well. Said she would have to she would have to be using up holiday hours. He told A that she was pushing her luck when she asked for a break to take her medications with a drink. So she resigned and she sued for harassment, age discrimination, and sex discrimination. And the UK tribunal ruled for A, saying that the manager had treated A, quote, less favorably than he would treat someone who was not a female of menopausal age. So that's just an example of a case um, in which the UK Equality Act applied to someone who was experiencing perimenopausal symptoms and was able to get some accommodation, but was not fully able to take advantage of that accommodation. There's also, I mean, if you look on, and of course we did for purposes of the book, if you look at the websites of UK lawyers who specialize in employment law, they now have menopause specific information. The Association for Human Resources Professionals has a guide entitled The Menopause at Work with detailed suggestions and sample policies. And there was actually a report, the Women and Equalities Committee of the UK Parliament's House of Commons issued a lengthy report titled Menopause in the Workplace. And so I mean, those are some of the examples that we give of how the UK is approaching this in a way that is different from the US. And I mean, just another example, also in 2019, which was World Menopause Day in October, a British TV station, Channel 4, made an announcement that it was adopting a dedicated menopause policy, one of the first in the country. So publicizing this menopause policy through a TV station is, again, an example of where the UK is. And the UK's largest employer, the National Health Service, announced a menopause policy of its own, designed to create a supportive working environment that champions women's well-being and others affected by the menopause transition so that they can stay in the workplace.
Interesting. Well, thank you for that. What do you feel needs further analysis in this regard and in this work?
I think we need many more studies on hormonal treatments and on effective and on non-hormonal treatments. So we need a lot more medical research looking at treatments for the perimenopausal transition and for menopause. So we need better funding of research studies. We need better education about menopausal hormonal treatment. We need attention to intersectionality and to how people of different races experience menopause. There are some studies on how menopause is, the perimenopausal transition is experienced differently, of course, by everyone. But we need more studies just on how that experience is affected by socioeconomic conditions and by other society-wide conditions. We need a commitment to menopause education. One of the themes that we kept hearing and that you hear if you listen to celebrities talking about this is, I had no idea what this was. I have no idea what menopause is. I couldn't be prepared for this. Even my medical providers didn't really know what was going on. So we need a lot more education, both of the general public, of women, of medical professionals. We need better discrimination policies. After we'd written this book, a colleague from another law school who said that she was experiencing disruptive sleep told me that she was happy to teach evening classes, but she preferred to be done by 8 p.m. And so she had asked for an accommodation to be done with her evening classes by 8 p.m. so she could try to get some sleep rather than 10 p.m. So we need better policies in the workplace that recognize these symptoms. We need much more public discussion. We need mentoring in the workplace. And we also need better protection of there are an increasing number of health apps. I mentioned marketing of treatments as well as of ways to share experiences. We need better, and my colleague Danielle Citron has written quite compellingly about this. We need better ways of ensuring privacy with these health apps and of preventing false advertising. I could again go on and on and on. There's so many changes. There's such a long agenda of what could be done. I feel like as we started, we talked about menopause having a moment. I think the menopause moment is going to continue, and many of these hopes for reforms are going to at least have further public discussion and hopefully happen in the future as people are increasingly open about the menopausal transition.
Great, thank you. And finally, you've spoken a little bit about this, but what can the law do to support women facing the challenges of menopause?
All right. First of all, the law can improve the privacy of the different privacy for people who participate in different aspects of menopausal tech. So in terms of health apps, I think few people are aware of the lack of privacy. We all assume that HIPAA will protect patient information, but many of these acts are not subject to privacy protection. So improved privacy protection. We need better protection in the workplace. I mean, ideally, if for someone who has to wear a uniform to work, people would be able to have a little bit more flexibility in their uniform. So for a woman experiencing a hot flash, she wouldn't have to wear long sleeves. She could wear short sleeves. But just that there would be more, there's a concept in discrimination law of universal design, so that we could design workplaces in which people who have different conditions could feel comfortable. So ensuring at the least that there is accommodation and protection against harassment, and then at the most changing cultures to ensure people with a variety of conditions feel comfortable. We need, I think I've already said, we need to ensure that there is more funding
Mhm.
of research. So comprehensive clinical trials that will deepen our knowledge, that research funding begins with appropriations, begins with the law to address health implications of menopause. We need we need to, just going back to, we need to codify appropriate accommodations and protections for people experiencing the menopausal transition and menopause, and changing work environments as well as oversight of markets. How's that?
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Professor, for talking with us about your book. This is a subject that, as you've said, is impacting millions of women today, and each day and each year, many more will make this transition. So this is such an important conversation. And I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with UVA's alumni, friends, and families.
Thanks very much. And my parting pieces of advice are more than half the population will experience perimenopause, and make sure that if you're experiencing it, you are open about it, and don't forget to talk to your healthcare provider.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. For upcoming podcasts and other Lifetime Learning programming, recordings, and blogs, please visit our website at engagement.virginia.edu/learn. You can also find our podcasts on the Virginia Audio Collective, which is a network of UVA podcasts hosted by WTJU Radio and can be found at virginiaaudio.org. So thanks again, and we look forward to you taking a part in Lifetime Learning programs in the future.